listeners, welcome to another exciting episode of 10x Growth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Arthi Vijayaraghavan, a product leader, book lover, and an avid reader. And today, we are diving deep into the subject that's reshaping healthcare as we know it, artificial intelligence. We're exploring and highlighting the book, Transforming Healthcare, the role and impact of artificial intelligence with the author himself, Mr. Faisal Mushtaq. Faisal, welcome to the show, and it's great having you here. The book details regarding how AI is reshaping diagnostics, treatment, patient engagement, and even the future of clinical decision making. Faisal is innovative, dynamic, and inspirational executive and an entrepreneur. He has an extensive leadership experience both in startups and Fortune 500 companies. He's now the founder and president of TechCon SoCal and member of New Fund, one of the largest and the most active angel investing networks in the country. He's an avid investor in several startups, advisor, mentor, and a charter member at Connect, Open, and Type. Faisal, it's a pleasure getting to know you and actually having you on the podcast. I'm sure our listeners from product engineering and angel investing background will benefit a lot from this. So I know I gave you a brief introduction. So maybe we can start off with what is the motivation for you to write the book and why now?
Yeah, thank you, Arthi, for the wonderful introduction. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be on your podcast. So I have been using AI for around 10, 12 years and for different verticals. Initially started with sensors and, autonomous drones, and then it evolved, I think, from the whole journey of CNNs and deep neural networks and LSTMs. And during the last 5 years, till last year, I was chief technology officer at a company called Sleep Number, where I helped them transform. It's from a consumer product company, which is they make smart beds with sensors, to a health and wellness company. And one of the aha moment for me was when I realized that we had a lot of data, but it was not being used to drive any insights for our consumers. I think it wasn't a healthcare. I would say it was in the wellness domain, which is kind of below the FDA guideline. So when we started cleaning up the data, building pipelines, building AI models, it was such a amazing experience that we were able to detect COVID. For example, we have even a published paper with Mayo Clinic, where we, just by sleeping on a bed, by through your heart rate variability, and breathing rate, we built AI models which had 7 to 8 dimensions, and it was able to predict or detect COVID. We could detect apnea and other health and wellness conditions. So that's just on the space where it's not regulated, it's still in the wellness space. And that was the kind of aha moment for me. And then the whole, I'll say, paradigm shift happened with the generative AI in a few years ago. And that just opened up a floodgate of innovation. So I felt it's the right moment to share and also kind of build a framework or a guideline, because things are still evolving, right? Every day we see things. So it's not a prediction. It's not like this is how it's done. This is how it has been evolving. And this is the rate of change. And these are the feasibility and options on the table right now where it can create an impact. Right. Because as we go every year over year, we're going to see a lot more innovative changes and innovation. So the floodgate have been opened. And now it's just every year, I think if we get the right startups and entrepreneurs and the larger companies investing in it, we're going to see it playing a big role. So that's kind of where the premise came, that I saw it going, and then I said this is the right time to kind of put it on paper. Yeah. And that's how it started.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, so one of the things, I have a background in radiology. So I used to work for Philips Healthcare in the radiology workflow. So one of the things, this was in 2015-16 when we were developing actually tools which were aiding the clinicians, like measurements tools. And also that was the time when iPad came about. So we launched a product which was the first one where clinicians and only radiologists could look at the radiologist images in the PAC system. So we were trying to expand it to the clinicians so that they can do patient planning and treatment planning. So one thing which I liked in your book is you talk about AI-assisted mammography. and reducing the false negatives, right? We had a lot of things where we used to have these double blind reads, and even with that, false negatives would go on. And you are saying that AI is able to reduce it to 20% by 20%, and how clinicians and machine learning models are actually analyzing, and they are able to find these subtle changes. So how are you seeing early detection reshaping the workflows? And in your algorithms, like, how are the guardrails are how are companies actually adding human in the loop for the guardrails as well?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I also write a very active blog on Substack. So I think maybe later you can share with it. It's called innovationexchange.substack.com, and where I have shorter articles, and one of the article that I wrote was about augmented intelligence. So I'm currently a big believer in augmented intelligence. What it means is human in the loop. So, what we should treat, again, there are very conflicting opinions and very strong opinions on both sides. So, but at least I'm sharing what I believe would be the right next step. Because whenever a change comes, you go from point A to point B, there are steps along the way. And I feel that these are the things that will make it easier to adopt by everyone as we go in a very methodical fashion. So one of the aspect is human in the loop that you touched upon, right? So I will say start as a step number one, start treating AI as a tool at your disposal, right? So what happens is that we use all kinds of tools. We have been using computers, we have been using software modules like Excel and Word document to write document. We have been using calculator, and I give this example that when calculator came out, there was a fear that people will forget maths and they will become it will. But if I want to multiply like 97 by 435, I will do it with a calculator, right? I mean, that's the tool at my disposal. What it does, it makes me faster, accurate answer, make me more productive, right? Those are the kind of the guardrails or I use. But say I'm in camping somewhere, I don't have my iPhone with me, and I have to multiply. I can still do it on paper. So I know how to do it. It's just that I'm using tools to make it, and that's where I think as human race we have to define those guardrails. So there are two kind of guardrails. One is on the user side, one is on the implementer side, and I'll touch upon both of them. On the user side, I feel strongly believe that we should use the tools at our disposal to make us faster, smarter, more productive, more efficient. And those are the things. If it start making us dumber, if it start making us, less creative, then that's where I think you have to draw a line that I should not, use this in that fashion. So the second part is on the model side, the model development and all that. But so right now, what's the workflow? You go for any kind of an exam, whether it's a mammography or whether it's a CT scan. You go through the machine. Something happens. You go home, and then there is a radiologist and the doctor, which are oversubscribed in our healthcare system right now. If you see, and which we'll touch upon, that there's a lot of other aspects of back office work that they do, which takes their time.
Yeah.
So they are juggling, they are oversubscribed, they're payer on one side, they're this whole dynamics of our unique healthcare system in North America.
Yeah.
So what happens is that they have to make a judgment and look at it, right? So again, I think the best outcome would be that you have a image, then you have a algorithm that gives you different, like these things look suspicious, and there's a link to it, why or how it reached that conclusion. If that explainability can be added also, and then the decision still lies with the doctor and the radiologist. If that's the workflow, it will hopefully make it faster. And it will also sometimes those small ones, those corner cases, those things that because of the workload, because of the just the amount of juggling that our health providers have to do, might be missed, not intentionally. Sometimes it, by an oversight, can be avoided. It can also does what we call pull it through. What it means is that sometimes things can be, if they can be diagnosed early, can be a very different prognosis than if they are done later, both in terms of cost, in terms of quality of life, in terms of the patient. So I think there is amazing positive value that can be created if used wisely, and that's what I think we all have to do. As far as model creation is concerned, obviously there can be false positive,
Yeah.
there can be false negatives also. That's why we have to have a human in the loop for now. And maybe in some point, maybe in the future, we might reach a point of, like, when sensitivity and specificity is like 99.99%. And I think at that point, I think we can revisit that. But right now, I think that's the workflow that we should do. And even if you look at self-driving cars, I remember going to CES in 2019 or 20, right before COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and every car manufacturer claimed level 5 autonomy by 2022. Everyone, like, there was, like, like within 2 years, and it's a hard problem to solve. You can going from, like, 0 to 80% accuracy, 80 to 85%, but for every delta after that, it becomes harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
So the curve is exponential, and that 0.1% improvement will require a lot more effort because of the corner cases, because of the nuances, because of all the other subtleties. So it has to be done in a very methodical way. I'm a believer in human in the loop, and I call it like augmented intelligence. What I mean by that is that using AI plus human intelligence to create better, faster, more efficient, and more productive ecosystem.
So one of the things I keep reading about is, right, all these coding tools like Claude and Anthropic's tools, they've improved, they've made a 10x engineer or a 1x engineer, a 10x engineer, and then a 10x engineer, a 100x engineer, right? So when it comes to healthcare, you touched upon it, right? The human in the loop right now is acting as kind of a judge, right? They are trying to say whether the false positive is really a false positive, or making sure they are getting their
Yeah.
expertise. But that is for that person who is acting as a judge is your 10x or a 100x radiologist already, because of the years of experience they have. But if we have AI now in the workflow like this, how do you think it might affect training of new clinicians? We need still, okay, instead of needing 100 clinicians, you need 10 clinicians, but you need those 10 clinicians to be smarter than, or being able to identify the discrepancies much more accurately as well. So, how do you think this will affect the role of training of these clinicians itself? And have you seen any startups or anything which are augmenting the training period as well, like making these clinicians much better?
Yeah, again, wonderful questions. I think, I mean, right, really insightful questions. So let me get to it. So I remember, like, I spend my time between, I live in San Diego, go to Bay Area often, driving on 101. I saw a sign that, AI will not replace you, but
Yeah.
an engineer using AI will replace you, right? And I strong believer in that augmented intelligence, or so it's a tool at our disposal. We cannot close our eyes and say. So that means everything we do has to evolve. How we teach our clinicians, how we teach our doctors, how we teach our software developers. And just to, and I'll do a plug. I have another book called AI Software Development Lifecycle and in the Age of Vibe Coding. It came out this summer. And I gave a talk at University of San Diego, and that was the same dilemma. They were training the new group or cohort of students, and saying, what should we teach them?
Yeah.
Should we teach them Claude and Copilot, or should we just hide them and say just go the same data structure and go the same route, right? And it's a very hard problem, right? And again, I'm a person that likes simple models, and I am a believer that I use the calculator examples, which is the simplest. I say you still need to know math,
Yeah.
but you need to know how to use a calculator also. So what I'm trying to get to is that if you say that I don't need to know how multiplication works, I have a calculator, that might not be the right way. So but making sure these new tools are embedded into the workflow, I think it's just a fact of life right now. You cannot close your eyes, because if you do that as an organization, as an enterprise, you will be left behind and against the other competitors who are moving faster. How you do it, how you define those guardrails, how you do it, I think that will be the key decision for more from legislative part also. Like we are defining these kind of our Congress and the European Union, they are start defining those kind of guardrails. But I think the best guardrail is the people building the models. They have, like, whether it's Anthropic, whether it's OpenAI, they have to define the guardrails, and then the people that are using, then the enterprise can define their own guardrails, how they use this whole um, ecosystem or technology. So your question was, how does it change? I think it in our curriculum, whether it's a training and technician or a doctor, this has to be a fact, and it's evolving fast. So you cannot say Anthropic version X is doing this, because by the time the person graduates, Anthropic might be acquired by somebody else, and so it has to be the concept and the framework that has to be that. LLMs or whatever model you're using has to be this, without the brand, without the model, without the vendor. And this is how you should use it, and this is how you should look at it, and this is how the accuracy trajectory is going. They're at 85%, for example, and by the time, 5 years from now, it might be at 99%. So the decision criteria will change. But you have to use it. You have to make sure that it's part of your process. You have to make sure that and then even the medtech vendors, whether it's even like the machine makers, will have AI embedded into it.
Yeah.
So when the image comes out, it will already have. Now, I hope they're not build. I mean, they build their models, but they don't build their own LLMs. I mean, they build their models. They can use their private data. Sometimes it's more about when you train, where's the data sources, right? And so I think at this day and age, just like compilers, we don't build compilers anymore. We use compilers, right? But we write code, we build application on top of it. So it's almost similar. I'm giving like simple example, like if people who are completely not in the AI loop can still understand what I'm saying. But so I think, to answer your question, just to summarize, yes, the way we teach everyone from software developers to lab technicians to doctors have to evolve, and it's the responsibility of our people who are defining the academia from they have to be also accept that fact and do it. And there's an example I give all the time. I mean, most of my talks is about Macy's Day Parade in like 1906. It was all horse carriages and one Ford motor model. 1916, it was all Model T, and I think you can Google it up. So 10 years, the world changed, and you must be saying, what happened to the horse breeder, or what happened to the grass or the farmer, right? But more jobs were created, more wealth was created, right? You have to accept that, by the innovation. So innovation always does that. How you use it, how you adopt it, how do you get ahead of it as an individual, as an enterprise, as an organization, as a institution, I think it's of paramount importance.
Yeah, I think the main thing is about this expertise and also this pattern matching, right? Essentially, how do you like pattern matching and expertise? The LLMs are way ahead, or the AI models are way ahead. So how do you have the human also somewhere contributing to it? I think that's where it is. And I know we have been talking a lot about models and basic AI, like, or LLMs and stuff. But the main thing, I work in an organization which is looking at agentic or doing a lot of work on agentic AI itself. So it's like not just telling you this is the thing and then stopping there, but agent is going to plan, it's going to execute and execute on your behalf, and it's going to do the work when you're not around as well. Like I know Replit recently introduced agentic AI even in their coding platforms.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing agentic AI coming in these systems? Are you seeing already they acting on top of clinicians, or are they doing basic tasks like scheduling, or where are you seeing that coming up?
Yeah, so I think let me break down your question again. A great question. So, so I think agentic framework and agentic infrastructure and agentic concept is going to is coming, and it's going to be pervasive.
Yeah.
Now the question is, industry by industry, it will be different, right? So even let's take an example of a normal system. Like I've run huge infrastructure serving millions of consumer, right? So now if something happens, right? Something happened, we used to diagnose, we need to triage, we need to restart services so that that SaaS service can come online. Now eventually it will be agentic that will detect from the logs, this might have happened, that this, maybe this Kubernetes cluster is down and we need to start it. Now the question would be, there's a human side of it. There's no compliance there. There's no regulatory space. This is just a normal, just say, a tech SaaS company. Here also the CTO, the CEO, the CIO will have to make a decision that how much I can. Although if it's doable, that's one thing. Whether I feel comfortable doing it is the second other aspects of it. So that will come in, that where we draw those guardrails. Will I allow, just like if you remember Terminator, like if say some missiles are coming in, AI can tell you that there is some projectile coming in. Whether you allow it to do a fire without validating, that's where the admiral or that will have to make that decision. So where do you lose that part of control? Where will be and then we'll come to the regulated industry like healthcare. So in normal industries also, there are a lot of things that are doable at this time as we speak. Whether they will be like, if one of my, no, I can, one thing change, like if 3 years back, if I was scoping a project and I'll say they will take 50 engineers, now I might say it takes 6 engineers and I can do it. That part has changed.
Yeah.
But to the point that one engineer comes in and say, I don't know how to code, but this Replit code, and I'm going to deploy in production, serving millions of transactions, and it's the multi-billion-dollar company. Whether as a CEO, the CTO, CIO, will I allow it? That's a different question. So that's on the no. So I think again, methodical, step-by-step deployment. Use it as co-pilot, use it as code review. Like for example, one of the hardest things, I normally give you example and then I'll come to it. Like code review was the hardest thing. Unit testing was the hardest thing ever. Since I've been leading teams. That's a great tool to use that, right?
Yeah.
Write code and auto, unit test, and your co-pilot or your co-partner, which is AI, can generate that, because that's not something engineers love doing it, and that can make us better, right? Make us better, faster, safer, right? But on the other side, if you say that all the code is generated by Replit or Cursor, and I don't know how it works and I can just deploy it, that part I think I'm not very comfortable at this stage, and I don't know many leaders would be. On the real business side, when you have really reputation of a company or billions of dollars at stake, it's a very different decision making process than theoretically what's possible. Now when you come to regulated industry, which was your original question, I think there is another elephant in the room that we didn't talk about, and that's about regulation, FDA, about regulation, about privacy, and all that, right? So a lot of those guidelines will be defined by the a lot of these things. And when you come to the healthcare domain, what's possible and what's allowed and what's doable will be very different set of things, at least for some time, because there's insurance, there's say AI can diagnose you have XYZ disease, and agentic AI, and it can prescribe a test that's $50,000, and insurance will insurance approve it, like that, oh, this is a very smart AI, it has a. So that's where I think that the responsibility, credibility, like the process is little more intertwined in our healthcare system. So it will be used for other things. There are a lot of which I call back office work.
Yeah.
Even in the regulatory studies, there were different studies, but like significant amount of time they spend on taking notes, filling for insurance, but all that work can be done by these AI. I mean, again, as long as it's HIPAA compliant, privacy, all those things, that has to be a baseline. But there won't be an FDA requirement that you can't use this AI for taking notes and making you faster and use your time for maybe looking at the diagnosis. And the second part would be there's always be a tussle, like the research happens at the speed of light. If you go to any, even like a small vertical conference, like I used to go to these sleep conferences because I was a sleep number, and I was just overwhelmed by the amount of research being done in sleep only. That's just not even like some cancer or some major, and the amount of insights being coming. So it's very hard to stay abreast. And I mean, AI has an edge there, that anything that's published publicly can be ingested and can be trained on, right? But as a human, as a doctor, when you're working 100 hours,
Yeah,
how
you
much
don't have
more
the time to be updated.
you don't have the time. So that's why sometimes there will always be. But then what you have is humanity. You have judgment. You have feelings. You have other non contextual insights that you which is hard to quantify and train, I think. So that's where the augmented part comes in, that we humans bring a different traits now, and AI will bring a different traits, and if we can combine them, that will make us better. But I still feel that in the healthcare space, agentic, I think the first thing would be the back office work. I think that will be the safest. But agentic diagnosis and complete treatment recommendation, I don't think it's gonna. Although it's possible, theoretically, might be a while before we become comfortable. Like I myself, I'm a techie. I still self-driving car. I don't feel comfortable. I still don't trust it. Although I know that it works, but it's just that feeling that can I just let go, and and that part will take time, I think. And so yeah, I think that again, I'm not forecasting the future, but I will say that let's go step by step. There are areas that can make us better right now. Why not get them first,
Yeah.
right? Low hanging fruits first, and then go after the bigger things.
Yeah, I think similar to how how in healthcare you classify medical devices as class 1, 2, and 3. I think all these agents also you will have to classify, and I'm sure
Yes.
they'll go to the base classes first, and then improve and see how the efficacy is also, right, for all of
Yeah.
these. I think
Yeah.
one other thing which you brought up was talked about this. How you will be okay with a site engineer and stuff like that making decisions when something goes down and things. I was thinking about the recent Cloudflare
Yeah.
fiasco
Yeah.
and then how it impacted. I really like that CTO's blog on how they diagnosed the issue and how long it took them to restart it and how it has to get propagated and stuff. It'll be interesting the next time it happens. I know they had a lot of models predicting as well these things, and still it took so much time. But it will be
Yeah.
interesting to see how these companies evolve by adding agents in the loop, where maybe the time period instead of 4 hours of downtime could have been just half an hour or 10
Yeah.
minutes. I don't know if it can be prevented, but still it could have
Yeah.
been optimized.
Yeah, optimize. I think, and I think if somebody says this is possible, I'll say, I've been on calls
Yeah.
where the whole sites are down and the CEO and the board is calling your phone. I'm the CTO,
Yeah.
and and that pressure that you have to handle at that every minute and how much downtime, because it's impacting business,
Yeah.
right? So I think that's where the reality kicks in versus the theoretical, what's possible and what's cool, right? So that's where I think there will be a balancing act, I think. But I think again, faster, better, more efficient. So hopefully these tools will help diagnose and rectify and mitigate
Yeah.
faster in the ops space, right? So I think that will be, I think that's possible because there's no regulatory space, there are constraints there, right? So
You
hopefully,
don't know. You still like
yeah,
these are powering other big
yeah.
banking institutions and stuff like that, right? So I'm sure
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
other
yeah, yeah, yeah,
regulatories.
yeah, yeah. Then they will be different. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
so. One more thing, like I'm obviously a data person. The one thing which I always worry about is like these models and stuff. How say you obviously you have a multi background from different countries as well, right? So how are you seeing these models which are being trained in say different populations exploring? Like I know for
Yeah,
mammography, the first example which you gave, it's
yeah,
definitely needs to be trained on say Asian populations because the
yeah,
women are actually pathologically
yeah,
different than the other populations
yeah.
and stuff. So how are you seeing regulatory oversight and fairness in the data set itself which are being used to train these models?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, and that's where I think um, the if you step back, I think apart from the models, data is just gold right now, like what you train on. And so one is the public data. You discover the web and you get all that information. But the most important thing is about, like, when you talk about these kind of data, say you're building a model to detect skin cancer, and that so then there's the texture, there's different um, aspects of it. So if your data sources are all even age distribution, skin, so there's so how do you make sure? So I think people are trying to make sure that the data set is well worked, but I think it's still harder because there's also pressure to move faster, right? So if you're doing a clinical trial and it's doing North America, I mean, the probability is that majority of the recipients would be white, right? It's just how it is, right? So if a trial is being done in Africa, it will be more darker skin tone. So I think it's that's the responsibility, and I think that also has to be more an independent standard also, like maybe like a regulatory authority that says that how do you make sure that this is the kind of distribution you have, and there's no guarantee in that. But if you're not including that portion in your analysis, you can come up with amazing results that it says X% accuracy, but it might fail when the pigmentation changes, when the texture changes, or maybe the kind of disease you're looking for, the cancer, might manifest differently in different ethnicities and all that. So I think that's always a challenge, and I think it's how you create the clinical trial or collect the data. And a lot of companies are self-regulating right now. Like they do, like when we were doing it, we used to do. Although we didn't have any younger kids, so most of the sleepers were 18 and above on our platform. So we cannot publish anything that says that this is how kids sleep behavior works, because we didn't have data on it, right? So I think that's why I think the companies also have to define that it's at a very high level, it's pattern matching still, right? Very so you have to make sure what you feed in is well represented of your target customer or the target recipient of that information, right? And I don't think anybody have solved this problem, at least in my kind of perspective.
It's a very hard problem,
because it's very hard. It's very hard because if you look, you can zoom in. When you zoom out, we are like say 7 billion population, different tones, different sizes, different and it becomes very hard. So what happens is then maybe you define those guardrails that this is only for this kind of and then you add on more data sources and then expand it. So that's why I think maybe if it's not possible, if a lot of companies are if they are a startup and you're very focusing on one specific, you can do that in terms of but if you are a more homogeneous country like Japan or everything, then it's different. In US, we are very diverse, right? So if you're doing in US, then what you need to make sure is that they're all representation of our population is represented at the right mix is covered, and those models accommodate that.
Yeah, and I think it's also in the user feedback as well, right? Like, say, for example, in the data is one thing, but then when, say, suppose if it's analyzing a different person who's not trained in the data set or something, you showcase to the clinician exactly how confident and what is the accuracy with which you are giving the answer, so that the clinician is also putting their lens, or it is automatically flagged for a much more second round of opinion or a human in the loop. I think that makes it.
I agree. Yeah, that's a good point, right? So again, human in the loop again, that we discussed earlier. So and then I think what you're touching upon, which is a very valid point, is that the model itself or the tool itself or the AI itself kind of mentions the constraints it has to make sure that they take into account when they're doing their human judgment on top of it. Yeah, I think that's how it has to be. That the transparency has to be there. And again, a lot of these, like think of medtech companies. A lot of this it's an IP. It's a trade secret or their own differentiator. So they publish papers and all. I mean, there you will see that but those are smaller trials. Like you will say that they did this trial on this kind of population. I think if there's a paper published it. But again, if you're doing clinical trials, then when you have CROs and all that, you can say that I need these kind of mix of people that I want to do that. Again, sometimes there's the pressure, sometimes there's deadlines, right? So again, it's a work in progress. I will say nobody has solved it completely, that this is the right model, this is the right mix that you do, and you'll get magically the right answer. It will always be iterative, but just make sure that the guidelines are there, that we have to be well represented of the population.
So how do you see, like, in terms of, say, I know we've talked about where we are currently, so what are some exciting areas which you are looking at in the next 5 years or something, at least in the startups you're seeing in your investments, and what is your area of focus itself?
Yeah, I think typically it's also the founders itself, right? So which is kind of weird question, but like when you need to know what your core competency is. So for example, like if you're a founding team which has one amazing PhD in drug discovery, or it has done a lot of work in and then there's an AI guru, and so that's a very different so typically I think a lot of work being done in drug discovery using AI, But then if I'm since my focus is a lot more early, startup. So if the founding team needs to know that their core competency resides in it, because that required multiple domains coming together. The easiest one, obviously, is the back office, stuff that I mentioned, right? So the optimization of different workflows, vertical AI, where you are automating, or you are kind of making that productive. That part, I think, is it's amazing. I think if they can move fast and integrate with the ecosystem partners that are there. I think if then the other part would be drug discovery. I'm seeing a lot of new molecules, a lot of new things being done, and a lot of money being thrown at that also, because I think there's a lot of potential. Then there is the gene editing part. I think CAR T theory, and a lot of diagnosis that being done using AI. So I think those are the various verticals. Then image processing using diagnostics. I think that part. The challenge there would be the data itself, resides with the larger medtech vendors. I think that so to get that source of data to train your models. If I'm talking from a startup perspective, right? So you are sometimes constrained by the data that you have. You can get the models, you can tweak the models, I think, but the point is, where is the data coming from, right? Just again, giving example of sleep number, we had data from millions of sleepers. That's not public data. So if a startup was trying to do it, they will not have access to that data. So they will have access. There's some public data sets out there, but then that gates your accuracy, what you can build. So again, if you're a startup, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, first you have to think, what's your core DNA? Like if you are co-founding team, what are the building blocks that you bring in, and your passion, and your previous work history, how that aligns, right? So that tells you what will be the thing. So there are many problems to be solved, right? You have to solve the right problem based on what you kind of be possible of. So there are low hanging fruits, and then there are these more advanced things that are being done, that will that are doing. The challenge also is that we have these bigger players, like say EMR, EHR. There are few players that are there, right? And now the problem is that if you're building anything in that space, that integration has to be a key, because it will be either Cerner or Epic, and if you are not integrated, then another new unknown startups tool being brought in. So that's on the startup side. For larger companies, I think it's an amazing opportunity to innovate. And typically for larger companies, there are two ways they can innovate, right? Either they digitally transform themselves. So just having a lot of data does not mean you can do a lot of things. You need to have the right talent. You need to have the right data, clean data pipelines, infrastructure you have built, because that itself takes time, making sure that your architecture, your sources, and data is not fragmented. A lot of these larger companies, what I've seen is data is fragmented. That data is spread across different functions. They don't, so to get the full picture itself within an enterprise becomes challenging. And so I think those are the larger company problems. But the good thing is they have money. So they can acquire these great startups, and because startups come with a mindset to move fast, and they can solve a specific targeted solution or targeted problem. But I will see a lot of advancements with AI. I think on the back office work, on the drug discovery, on the image processing, and early diagnostics, with the human in the loop. I still believe that will be the model for some time. So I think there are, in the book also, I touch upon a lot of things, because I think I always think from the entrepreneur perspective. So when you're thinking, these are all the problem statements, and you have to also go after a problem to solve it, because good entrepreneurs solve problems first, rather than cool technology. Technology is an enabler, is a tool to solve a problem. So first you have to have the skill set, then you have to have that passion, experience, hopefully. I'll say majority of the cases, there have been some outliers that they have no experience, and they're always those people, but I'm talking about the high percentile of people, right? So then identifying a problem and solving. There are a bunch of problems. There are many great books out there. My book also touches upon the problems that are yet to be solved, I think. And then I think that I think the opportunity lies. The good thing is that the compute, why did AI pick up right now? Data, compute, power. Those were the missing pieces. They all came magically together. So now is the golden era, right? You have the compute, you have the hopefully, power. I mean, right now we are okay, but I think that the way we are doing it, I think we'll have alternate sources of power to fund to power this in terms of, and then so I think though that's where the advancements are coming in. I still feel healthcare will lag a little bit because of the regulatory and other constraints. But it still we will, if you look back few years from now and we having this talk again, we will be able to mention many things that are done very differently. Simply like the hardest part that we had was taking meeting minutes. I mean, I used to have the hardest time. I have a team of my leaders. I said, who's taking minutes? Somebody has to reluctant, and then the minutes are different. Now, who takes minutes, right? Just your chatbot joins the meeting and you get a nice summarized minutes, right? So, I mean, I'm just giving very simple examples, but the point is that life is becoming easier and in many areas, and some areas where there are human life at stake, and there are other sensitivities at stake, things will have to be really will take the higher bar has to be met.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think one of the companies which I follow very closely is Suki. So how it is transforming the normal healthcare processes for minutes, and also how it is going to be there in the room when the clinicians are working with the patients. So some of the innovations which they have been doing, I've been really amazed at actually. So yeah, and I like what you are saying. It's just like even in the era of AI, it is the team who makes a difference. It's the current the selection of different kinds of perspective and different skill sets and backgrounds which will help you make the best company and invest and go solve the hard problems. I think the problems is the most interesting part. So identifying the correct problem to solve and going after it, and having the grit to take it to actually solve it. I think those are the three key things. So it's like even if it's the AI, it is you need those perseverance and the passion to solve the problem actually. So it's
That's
been
like a baseline for entrepreneurs, like great perseverance and not afraid of being failures, because you'll have to iterate, you have to kind of pivot. So all those things are kind of like that. Those are the like you touched upon, like those are the building blocks of entrepreneurship. And if you don't have it, don't try it. I think it's or build it. I will say like build those skills, because things don't go as you plan.
yeah.
And
So that is the thing, right? Like with AI, what I'm saying is the entry or the pitching has become what do you say easier. The entry has become easier, but then still the bar to actually pass in order to actually build a successful business is still a hard job, right? So it's I think that is the era here, right? So you'll have more ideas, but the ideas which are going to be successful are the ones who have the grit and the
yes.
passion to go after it and actually go to completion. Totally agree with you. So I think it's an incredible conversation. I got to learn a lot from your book and your guide, warning, and also inspiration, all wrapped into one where we are going. So it's as you said, when we have this chat again in the next 2 years or something, I think I wouldn't even say
Yeah.
5 years. In the next 2 years,
Yeah, 2
the
years.
pace
Yeah.
is which things are going, things will
Yeah.
be different. We'll have a lot of ways to talk about how AI is amplifying human capability. I like that part which you always said, right? It's going to use it to amplify the human capability, expanding access. And I hope it brings equity and it is much more equitable and inclusive.
Yes.
So I think that is the
Yes.
most important for healthcare itself. So for the listeners who are listening to the book is Transforming Healthcare, the Role and Impact of Artificial Intelligence. Check out Faisal's other books on SDLC and also other AI items as well. So whether you're a clinician, technologist, or a policymaker, these are some things which you have to keep up with and make sure that you are including it both in your workflows and also building things which are helping the greater good. So thank you. It is a pleasure having you, Faisal. Last thoughts: how can our listeners get in touch with you, and where can we find you? We'll make sure to include in
Yeah.
the show notes as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's first of all, thank you for the invitation. I think so for easy, like my first name, last name, .co is my website. So you can go there. It has all my articles, books, and I also run a conference called TechCon Global. So there's all the information in one place. Also, the Substack is called iexchange.substack.com. So I think all those informations, you can get a lot more cool stuff there.
Yeah, I'll make sure that we include it in our show notes so that our listeners can be in touch with you. Thank you. Until next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep transforming impact, especially in healthcare. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Arthi. Thank you.